Rhonda, you have the floor.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you took time out of your schedule today to join us. We are all at CNCS on a telework schedule for at least another week. We'll see after that. If you all are teleworking or whatever you're doing, we hope that you're staying safe and taking precautions to avoid the spread of the coronavirus. But thank you again for joining us. Over the next few minutes, you're going to hear from our friends at My Good Deed, 911day.org, also known as 911day.org. My colleague, Sarah Fry, who will talk about the NOFA that's available still on the street right now for grants from CNCS. You'll hear from another of My Good Deed, 911day.org's leaders, Jay Winnick, who is also a 9/11 family member. And we will all talk about ways that we're working together, and we hope that you will join us for 9/11 Day this year and next year and going forward, how to align and participate with national goals, how to share your projects, what the program is planned for the 20th anniversary for 2020 and the 20th anniversary, and how we hope you'll hear from your colleagues on the phone toward the end of the call, how their projects are going to help roll up to something really, really fabulous and big on 9/11 Day to help communities continue to do great volunteer service, honor 9/11 Day and all of the people who were lost on 9/11 or injured or rose in service on 9/11. And with that, I'm happy to turn it over to my colleague, Sarah Fry, to talk about the NOFA.
Thank you, Rhonda. CNCS provides grants in the form of Day of Service Awards for both 9/11 and Martin Luther King Jr. Day. The purpose of our 9/11 Day grant funding is to mobilize more Americans to engage in service and remembrance activities that meet community needs and honor the sacrifice of those who lost their lives or family members on September 11, 2001, or who rose in service because of that tragedy. As Rhonda mentioned, we are currently holding a competition for 9/11 Day and MLK Day service activities occurring in calendar year 2021, which is the 20th anniversary of 9/11 attacks. For 9/11 Day of Service and Remembrance, areas of priority consideration are engaging and supporting veterans and military families in service activities, developing educational materials, educating and engaging youth in service to honor 9/11, preparing communities for disasters, and training volunteers who make a commitment for future service. We encourage grant requests to be made between $20,000 and $200,000. Applications are due by 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday, March 25, 2020. For more information, you can go to www.nationalservice.gov/Day of Service. And with that, I will hand it off to David Payne, President and co-founder of My Good Deed.
Well, welcome everyone. And I would like to begin by thanking the Corporation for National and Community Service for hosting this important event. As Sarah mentioned, my name is David Payne. I am the president and co-founder of the nonprofit group, My Good Deed, which is also known as 9/11 Day. And we were, as you may know, created as an organization about 6 months after the September 11th attacks by a consortium of more than 40 9/11 leaders that included first responders, survivors, of course 9/11 family members, with the mission of trying to determine ultimately what we wanted to do about the legacy of 9/11 and how we would ultimately keep the promise that was made in the hours after the September 11th attack to, quote, never forget. And what I'd like to do is to begin by introducing my good friend and co-founder, Jay Winnick, to tell you a little bit more about that early history and ultimately what the 9/11 community wanted to do then and hopes to do now, and what we would like to see you help us do over the next year and a half as we prepare in particular for the 20th anniversary of 9/11 in 2021. With that, Jay?
Yeah, hi, David. Thank you for that intro, and thank you all for joining with us today to learn more about 9/11 Day and the opportunities that you have to participate and have your constituents participate. And of course, thanks to everybody at CNCS for being such great partners to us and for helping to organize today's conversation. As Rhonda mentioned, I am a 9/11 family member. My brother, Glenn Winnick, 3 years my junior, was a partner at the large law firm Holland & Knight. But for 20 years, Glenn was also a volunteer firefighter and an EMT in our hometown on Long Island. And on that morning, he helped evacuate the Holland & Knight law offices, were just located about 2 blocks from the Trade Center, borrowed some first responder equipment from responders on the scene that were evacuating his building, and he raced into the South Tower to save lives. His partial remains were found in late March 2002. And so he was certainly a heroic individual, but not nearly the only one. As we all know, the day was filled with enormous acts of courage and selflessness and bravery and putting others before oneself. And that kind of behavior and the behavior of all Americans that followed in the immediate aftermath of the attacks was indeed what inspired this observance that we tried to get going on a grassroots level. We felt like that spirit of focus on our common humanity, of brotherhood and sisterhood, that was a way to push back against the terrorists. That was too valuable to lose and to lose sight of. And that as we looked forward at the question of how would Americans from coast to coast in all 50 states mark the day. And it made sense to us, our small group, that they should mark the day by doing good deeds, by pitching in with acts large and small. But we didn't want to presume that we knew what we were talking about. So we did meet early on with the leaders of all the many very virtuous and worthwhile 9/11 organizations that had surfaced after the attacks. And there was universal acceptance and enthusiasm for a coalition that we pulled together to try and make 9/11 a day of service. And so we knew we were on the right track and we set out to do that. Eventually thousands of people responded to it by coming to our first website and registering their good deeds. And over time, with the help of the corporation and many others, those thousands turned into millions. And so we feel like together, this very large and growing coalition has done a good job to date, establishing a ritual in this country where people go out of their way for a moment, for hours, for the full day, whatever it is, to mark the day, pay tribute to those who were lost, those who were injured, those who were still sickened by their actions at Ground Zero and who are still suffering, and those, as Rhonda said, who rose in service, which is so essential to this. And that ritual is growing. You know, it's essentially the largest annual day of charitable engagement in the nation. So we thank you for your interest in participating in that, and we have a lot of good and important work together to do with you as we move forward towards the 20th anniversary.
Thank you, Jay. As we begin to embark on what will now be a year-and-a-half campaign to prepare for the 20th anniversary of 9/11, we want to invite all of you to particularly as grantees and organizations that have an interest in service and in honoring those that were killed and injured and those that rose in service, to join us in taking the day back from the terrorists once and for all. We've been working toward this moment for the last 18 years. We see the 20th anniversary of 9/11 as the most important moment in time when the nation and the world's eyes will again be on this tragedy, to permanently redefine 9/11, perhaps for generations to come, so that the anniversary is not always seen as a day of tragedy, but ultimately becomes a national and potentially international day of simply doing good, where we join together in the spirit of unity and togetherness to help those in need. And for us, we felt that that was the kind of legacy that had to be left, given the magnitude of this tragedy. It would be really the only way in which we could honestly say that we truly had kept the promise never to forget. And we realized, though, that we're just one organization, and ultimately, in order to make that happen, we need all of you, and we need tens of thousands of other organizations, and ultimately millions of other people to understand what we're all trying to accomplish together and to play a vital and critical role in making that happen. And the purpose of this webinar is to provide you with the kind of information that you need so you'll understand what kind of programs are planned in general, and to give you sort of the ideas and toolkits and resources that will allow you to engage fully in helping us take this day back from the terrorists once and for all. I thought we'd begin by talking a little bit about, what are the goals for the 9/11 Day observance in general, and certainly among those, the goals that the 9/11 families and community are hoping that you could all help support. The first is just building awareness of the day. We've been at this now, obviously, since 2002, and the passage of the legislation under the Edward M. Kennedy Serve America Act in 2009 paved the way and certainly led to a substantial increase in the number of people that were aware that 9/11 has become a national day of service and remembrance, and has led to a huge amount of participation. As Jay mentioned, 30 million people get out and do some form of charitable work on 9/11, but yet only about a third of the country is actually aware that September 11th is a day of service. And people say, well, how could that be possible? I mean, you guys have been working on it for 18 years, but really, we've really only been working on it for 18 days, because that's we only get media attention and awareness building usually right around September 11th, and perhaps for a few days leading up to that. And so in the grand scheme of things, the country is still learning about this. It's still very new for people, and particularly among younger people, education is a vital part of what we all need to do. And I bring that up in the context of the projects that you're planning and putting on, and how important it will be for you to go beyond the projects you're thinking about yourself, to embrace also these broader goals, so that if there are opportunities to help build awareness of 9/11 as a day of service in the context of your projects, however you might do that. It could be through media, it could just simply through emails or social media posts. The more organizations can partner with the 9/11 community to do that, the better it'll be, because we definitely feel that the 20th anniversary is an opportunity for us to double nationwide awareness of what 9/11 is becoming. The second really is the ritual that we're trying to teach people to perform in the context of 9/11. There can be confusion about it. Is it a day of volunteering? What is it? Is it the same as Martin Luther King's Day? What really is 9/11 Day all about? And from the very beginning, it was about trying to create a call to action that would be extraordinarily inclusive, meaning that anybody at almost any age could somehow participate in some way if they were able to do so. And so it was about good deed doing. So that's volunteering. That could be making a charitable contribution, a monetary donation, or giving something away, or it could just simply be helping friends, relatives, or neighbors. It even includes people individually doing good deeds for themselves, like quitting smoking. And so the ability for you to educate people about that and also to express that broader definition of good deed doing in the context of your program is vital. And also, it's important for you to go beyond just what you're specifically doing with your program to also educate and promote this ritual of and awareness of it through all your various channels. So if you're a nonprofit and you're planning a volunteer project, don't stop there. Consider the opportunity to reach out to your members and your friends and your followers and invite them to make donations to you, because it's very much like Giving Tuesday in some respects, which is, it is an opportunity for organizations to raise money. And oftentimes we see many groups not realizing that, not taking advantage of it. So understanding the ritual that the 9/11 community created around this day is a vital part of this program and should be a vital part of what you're doing. This is all about what we just discussed, which engaging fully in the day. Don't limit your involvement to the project that you're doing. As important as that is, be part of the broad program that's about education, about mobilizing people, about giving people lots of opportunities to get involved. We do this a lot with employers. They might be sending many of their staff members to, say, volunteer service projects for 9/11, including some of ours. But we also say to them, hey, send emails out to the rest of your colleagues, many of the ones who might not be able to participate, might not want to volunteer, but to tell them that they could do their own good deeds. They could do things at home. They could plan projects and activities with their children as a way to teach them about the day in a positive way. So remember to think about engaging fully. Come out of your planning with this broad, holistic way of thinking about your involvement. That'll help the 9/11 community extend its impact and footprint, and ultimately, help us with this notion of transforming the day of tragedy into a day of doing good.
David, if I could just add a quick note to that. This point that David makes about engaging children is so important to us. From the outset, we wanted to establish this ritual that would essentially serve as a handoff from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next, long after those of us who experienced 9/11, who were alive when it happened, are gone. We want to create this observance with your participation, the participation of so many others, that really is ubiquitous, so that for all time, people understand they wake up on 9/11 day, it's a day to do good deeds. And ultimately, it's not just for the sake of doing it, it's about the impact that these millions and millions and millions of good deeds will have on people in need and communities in need for the betterment of the nation as a whole. So this ritual component of 9/11 day is very, very important as we look to the future, 20, 50 years from now and beyond.
Yeah, and building on that too, I didn't even sort of talk about yet how important it is that we're also at the same time talking about unity and about embracing our differences and the value of diversity, and that our country was built and grew on the basis of those principles. And so in our programs, for example, that we implement, we have a very strong component that is about bringing people of difference together and inviting organizations that represent many different faiths and races and backgrounds, so that we're not just about doing good deeds and helping, but we're doing it in the context of bringing people together, because that's what happened in the immediate aftermath of the attacks. So think about those elements when you're thinking about your own planning and your own project activities. Promoting a common brand identity. So it's very important, particularly as we prepare for the 20th, to begin to get the American public used to seeing the symbol for 9/11 day, which is a ubiquitous symbol. It's the 9/11 with the circle, which is sitting at the bottom right of this presentation. This is a symbol and an image that we want you to use along with your brand and along with the Corporation for National and Community Services brand. But we're going to be implementing a very significant public service advertising campaign that'll kick off in 2021 in particular, in which people will see this identity everywhere, and not unlike the pink ribbon for breast cancer awareness. And so it's really important that you include it in there so that people understand that you're part of the big National Day observance, that you're linked with it, that you have a common understanding of it, and that you are a party to this important movement. So please, we ask you to incorporate that identity in the programs you do. We want to involve you in the coalition that we're building. At the beginning, I talked about the importance of involving all of you, but also ultimately tens of thousands of organizations, schools, employers, faith groups, veteran organizations, all sorts of different entities, and have them all come together around this coalition that we call Tomorrow Together in preparation for and leading up to the 20th anniversary. I'll talk more about that in a minute. I will say that part of the coalition's important sort of benefits, we're going to be providing a lot of really interesting toolkits and some very unique content, almost a curricula that'll go on for the better part of a year, in which all the organizations that join will be both content consumers as well as content providers. And so there will be an opportunity potentially for your organization to offer up content, toolkits, webinars that other partners might have an opportunity to participate in. Ideally, what we want to do is create this really unique community. And if I talk too much about that now, I'll blow the next couple of slides. And then lastly, talk about this issue of registration of projects. You know, in the end, one of the things that we're hearing from Americans when we do our research is that they really are desperate to participate in 9/11 days, especially the ones that obviously know about it. The number one obstacle for them is they're not being presented with opportunities to do so. So they're not being, people or organizations are not reaching out to them, inviting them to attend events, even sending them an email saying, would you like to donate to us? So one of the most important things we want all of you to do is to think of ways in which you can create opportunities for your constituencies broadly to participate, not just your specific projects, but also ways in which they might donate to you or get involved in some other fashion. And to the degree that your project, you know, is something that would be potentially open to the public, you know, we want to make sure that you're registering that project in All for Good, that you're registering it in Volunteer Match. Do it in both places. The 911day.org website aggregates all of those registration opportunities, and our goal is to literally create, you know, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of new projects that are available online as early as you know, May, June of 2021, and of course do that this year as well, so that people can find opportunities to participate. There were a couple of questions about where you can get the logo. You can download that for free along with all of our toolkits at 911day.org. Okay. And if you have any other questions, of course, you'll be able to email us, and we'll give you our contact information for that purpose. So overall, our goal is to document and inspire 100 million good deeds. And we literally have the idea of having giant billboards in Times Square and in other major cities around the country, which will actually be tracking good deeds that are posted through social media. So you can all be part of that. And we want you to make sure that you're sharing with us, and your individual participants are sharing with us whatever you ultimately are doing for 9/11, both this year and 2021, as we lead up to the 20th anniversary. I'd like to take a moment to sort of preview with you some of which are confidential programs that are planned both for this year and the 20th anniversary of 9/11. There are, of course, opportunities for all of you to submit grant applications under the new NOFO under certain priority areas, which Rhonda spoke to a bit, along with Sarah. So we're obviously hoping to see as many projects focusing in on 9/11 Day that align with some of the NOFO priority areas. In addition to that, we have some substantial large-scale volunteer service projects that will be happening all around the country. Will be in anywhere from 12 to 14 cities this year, with as many as 20 cities by 2021. I'm going to have Jay talk about that in a minute. We'll go into a little bit more about the details of the coalition and tell you how to join and participate. Explore a little bit more on education and youth outreach, which is a part of the coalition effort. Want to touch on the Points of Light conference right now, which, as you know, is still scheduled for June 10th through the 13th. There's a possibility it may be delayed. It may not be. We're still waiting to hear. But if it continues to be planned as scheduled or gets delayed, we are expecting a fairly significant launch program on behalf of 9/11 Day around that time frame. So, Jay, would you like to speak a little bit about our meal packs, the history of that, and where we expect to be over the next year or two, and also perhaps how nonprofits that might be based in some of these communities could potentially participate by sending members, youth people, and youth and others that might want to participate?
Yeah. You know, from the outset, one of the real magical things about how we kind of orchestrated this observance was we were not specifically telling people what to do. It was wide open to do good deeds in your own comfort zone, again, reflective of the way people were contributing after the attacks. And that really did bring in all kinds of people, including, research which indicated the vast majority the first several years had not engaged in any form of charitable service before. So it was a very welcoming kind of model. But over the years, and that continued for many years that way, but in recent years, we resolved, along with the corporation and some other partners, that it would make sense to establish some signature projects so that we could shine a spotlight on one way in which people could participate. And given that, September is National Hunger Awareness Month, and that there is, unfortunately, a hunger situation in pretty much every city in this country, we kind of landed on that as being one kind of activity that could bring volunteers together to make a real difference, but also shine the spotlight on the national observance as a whole. So we began in New York City, I guess 4 years ago, by pulling together volunteers largely from our corporate sponsors, from faith-based groups, from colleges, people who work for the city, nonprofit partners, people in the hunger space, first responders, veterans, all together aboard the Intrepid, the aircraft carrier that's based in the Hudson River. And each year since in New York, we attract more than 4,000 volunteers. Last year, those volunteers packed more than 1 million meals, non-perishable meals in 2-hour shifts, all in one day. So it's an extraordinary output of good deeds and a very meaningful way to help people, individuals and families who are at risk in the New York region. Once we established kind of the framework for staging that kind of event, we expanded it to 3 more cities the following year, and then 4 more last year. So we staged these meal packs in 8 markets last year, with volunteers generating more than 3 million meals, which stayed in those communities, in those cities, and distributed through the largest food banks in each of those markets. This year, we're adding, maybe between 4 and 6 more cities, with the goal of being, as David said, in 20 cities with these meal packs for the 20th anniversary, collectively, in all likelihood, packing north of 10 million meals in one day. So it's a wonderful example, but just one example of the ways that people can participate and make a difference on 9/11 Day. You see here the list of cities that we have been in, continue to be in, and the asterisk cities are ones that we are likely to go to and are strongly considering for adding for the 20th anniversary. So in each of these cases, as I say, it's in a remarkable, diverse coalition of people from every demographic, every walk of life. Certainly there is room for, in each city, for the nonprofits to partner with us who happen to be located there. Many of the participating organizations participate in multiple markets. Corporations, for example, that have locations that match up employees located in more than one city. And it's a great way to bring people who are who work for the same organization together doing the same common cause, but in different locations.
Great, thanks, Jay. That's great.
Sure.
And we'll of course answer a lot of questions about this and about this particular program at the end. I should say too that we're going to try to leave plenty of time for questions. So we're going to move quickly through some of these preliminary slides. So let's talk a little bit more about Tomorrow Together. There are some goals specifically related to this coalition. We call it sort of Tomorrow Together because it's sort of the notion that we can't make the world better unless we do it. You know, we can't make the world better tomorrow unless we do it together. I mean, that's essentially the principle. And so, number one, we're working to generate a substantial increase in service opportunities for Americans between now and 2011, 20, and 21. You know, again, we're seeing that as a barrier to entry. People just, they want to participate, but they're not finding opportunities to do it that are readily available to them. So certainly we're looking at a lot of things here at the retail level, the possibility that people could be making donations through their local grocery store during the month of September to support, you know, a particular charity. Hunger might be an example of that. To obviously have organizations that create volunteer opportunities to develop and post many more of them in the system so that people can find them. All of that is a really critical part of what Tomorrow Together is meant to be. But at the same time, we want to try to have 9/11 be a catalytic moment when we have the opportunity to build an unprecedented coalition of national and regional organizations. You know, and again, tens of thousands of them that are all sort of part of this idea of transforming 9/11 from a day of tragedy into a day of doing good. People that believe in the idea of taking that day back from terrorists. And we think that because of that important call to action, that we can get many, many organizations to join. And the good news is it doesn't take anything that you don't have to spend money or there's no cost associated with joining. All you really have to do is commit to participating in any way, shape, or form that aligns with your own goals in supporting the 9/11 community's desire of changing this day. So that could just be building awareness of it. It could be organizing a project, your own project. It could be creating your own fundraising campaign. It could be anything that you want to do. So it's meant to be extraordinarily inclusive. So it can incorporate major national and even international nonprofits, all the way down to third grade classrooms in communities throughout the nation. So schools, major universities, nonprofit organizations. It could be fire stations. It could be very, very grassroots and also very, very national in scope. So we're going to be launching that program this year. Our intention was to kick it off at the Points of Light conference. If that gets delayed, we'll probably then announce it at the conference a little bit later in the year. But the goal is to make it easy for all of you to sign up. We are creating a simple sign-up page where you'll be able to do that, so you don't have to worry about it. At this point, we'll definitely get to you with the link to sign up. And at that point, you'll then get access to special toolkits and resources that we think some of our partners are going to be providing to us. For example, Twitter is offered to provide some special training programs and toolkits to help nonprofits learn how to better use social media. Salesforce is interested in providing some potential discounts and free services and other things for coalition members. So we're really looking at a way to try to create this online community that's very diverse, that can share content, share ideas, communicate with one another, and ultimately try to make sure that that entity doesn't go away after 9/11/2021, but continues to live as a way in which nonprofits can ultimately help and support one another. I think from our perspective, we always feel that the nonprofit community tends to work too much in silos. And it would be great if we all sort of understood what each other's strengths and weaknesses were and had an online way in which we could support one another. So essentially, that's what Tomorrow Together is really all about. And of course, the people who participate will be helping to shape what it ultimately looks like. So I wanted to close at least our part by talking about places where you could go for information and resources. And this will be a continuing, growing list here. And then I'll turn it back over to our friends at the Corporation for National and Community Service. Of course, you can obviously go to 911day.org, and we have something like over 20 plus youth education, teacher and parent lesson plans and guidebooks that are there, including a terrific higher education service learning program that was developed by George Washington University. And all of these are PDFs. You can just download them. You can change them. You can modify what you want to do. You can customize them. We're trying to make sure that everybody can do whatever they want to do. And whatever resources we can provide to you, we want to make them free and easy to use. And we also want you to know that you can reach out to us as an organization if you just have questions, if you're looking for guidance. I mean, one of our roles that we play with CNCS is to serve as a consultant advisor to all the grantees and to other organizations that want to get involved in the 9/11 Day movement, that want advice, counsel, guidance. We're here to provide that to you over the next 18 months and beyond. Also, too, you can go, of course, to the terrific resource page that the corporation provides, and you'll see that here, the nationalservice.gov page, which has got a lot of terrific resources. And then if you're interested in the NOFO, the nationalservice.gov/day of service will give you more information on exactly what, what's involved in applying for a grant consideration. I should also mention too that on the 911day.org page, we do have an aggregated volunteer search engine there. So All for Good and Volunteer Match projects will all appear there, not just the 9/11 ones, but any project. But you do have to register those projects directly through either the Volunteer Match site or All for Good. You can't register the projects on our page. We can only show the results from our page. So I just wanted to be clear about that. And then you, of course, can go to the 9/11 Memorial website. They also have some terrific educational and engagement resources there. If you go to our site, we also have a resource page where we have links to quite a number of other important 9/11 organizations that do provide helpful information and resources. Jay and I want to, and everyone from My Good Deed and the 9/11 community, we want to thank you for what you're doing to help transform this day, turning it into a day of good. It really means a lot to us. I think we wanted to just make sure that we told you what it was that the families were hoping to achieve, and to invite and ask you to support those goals in any way in which you can. With that, I'll turn it back over to the corporation to sort of walk you through sort of the sharing and discussion components and to ultimately close the webinar. Okay, Jeff?
Thanks, David and Jay. I'll take over the question and answer
great.
portion here. So we have one question right now in the Q&A panel, and then I'll ask Janice what questions she got from the chat. Here in the Q&A panel, it says, oh, I missed the first part of the meeting. Is there a link to watch the video? Yes, we are recording this session, and we can get the link afterwards to participants. I know also in the chat panel, we had a question about the grant competition deadline being extended. So CNCS is monitoring the coronavirus situation and how it's impacting our community partners. As of today, the deadline remains March 25. You can go to www.nationalservice.gov/coronavirus to see how CNCS is responding to the virus. I'll put that link here in the chat. Jen, did you want to answer the next question from the chat panel?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just pulling those up here. I had to unmute myself. So David, I know that you had answered a couple of these questions in the chat, but it may make sense for you to address them here with the larger group. So the first one that came through was about the 9/11 Day logo and where that's available and what formats we've got available.
Yeah, so that'll be available at 911day.org. If you go to resources, you'll see sort of a section there that has lots and lots of resources, and there'll be a page where you can download the logo in just about any format you want. So just the circle or the Tomorrow Together look. You can. We also have it in a reverse out white, plain black and white. So if what you see isn't what you're looking for, just let us know. We'll make it for you and send it to you. And you can email me at david@911day.org. So that's david@911day.org with any questions or assistance that you might need, and then we'll get that routed to the right team.
Great. The second question, again, which I know you addressed, but we'll ask it here, is about our connection with Volunteer Match.
Yes, right. So we have a partnership with them as we do with All for Good. And one of the interesting things about our website, and maybe it's because of the importance of unity, both organizations have agreed to share their respective databases with us. So an individual who might come to our website would be able to search for and find volunteer projects that would be registered in either database. So if you happen to use primarily All for Good to register your volunteer projects or Volunteer Match, you don't have to be concerned. Either one will show up on our site. You cannot, however, register your project at our site. So you have to go through your own All for Good account or your own Volunteer Match account. And if it's a 9/11 project, be sure that you're putting keywords in there and selecting it for a 9/11 Day of Service and Remembrance. That way it'll populate higher on our list. At the same time, we also are publishing all volunteer opportunities. So it's not limited to 9/11 specifically. It's any volunteer opportunity created by any organization coming from either one of those two databases will be available on our site. And I should say that when 9/11 rolls around, the volunteer site is the most frequently trafficked page on our site.
So Jen, I think next we have a raised hand. So I'm going to give Jeff the opportunity to quickly explain the raised hand feature and let him ask the question from that first one we got.
Hello again. To ask a question verbally, select the raise hand icon. You will be placed into a queue. When we are ready for your question, we will unmute you. A prompt will display, confirm you want the unmute, and then ask your question. And we do have a hand raised by Pixel 3. Go ahead, Pixel 3, to hit the prompt and ask a question.
Pixel 3, we're not hearing your question. I'm going to move on to the next one. If you want to put your question in the chat or in the Q&A panel, we can also get to it that way. Or are you there?
Is it working now?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. My question is, I'm a teacher in the Tampa Bay area, and I know full well getting together with people now that we're in quarantine is going to be a big challenge, and getting through, the hoops with a principal and then a school district and the grants office and all that. And I know I just heard the response about the possibility of extending the deadline, so I know that we're tied in. But is there any way you can connect people from geographic areas at this early stage? Like if you happen to see other people from my area, if we could make the connection to go to write a grant together. I'm a teacher, so I don't have a nonprofit. I'm actually working on creating one, but I don't think I'll have it ready, by March.
So Pixel 3, I think your question's in reference to the grant competition. Is that correct? And if you can partner with others from the same geographic region, am I summing that up correctly?
Yes, and can you connect people?
So CNCS doesn't typically make suggestions directly for connecting one organization to the other, you are certainly welcome to apply for a grant with community partners. In fact, a lot of our Day of Service grantees act as kind of the center point for community partners. Some of them directly sub-grant, some act as pass-through entities. Like I said, the deadline right now is still March 25. Did have a competition last year. We got some more funds this year, so we're doing a competition. It still remains to be seen whether we'll do one in the following year. So yes, you are able to connect with other partners on one grant application, but you would be the main one submitting it, is the best way I think to explain that.
Okay, all right. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. And Jen, I'm going to go back to you for questions in the chat.
Yeah, so we had Robin from Palo Alto asking about David, about our 2020 event, Meal Pack Cities. David, do you want to address that?
Yeah, so we, as you may know, Robin, we have a project in last 2 years, we were actually in downtown San Francisco. This year, we're probably going to move it over to Oakland, which makes it further away from you, I realize. We try to put our projects in locations where, in major cities, sort of downtown hubs, so that it's easy for large numbers of employers and other organizations to participate. So certainly, I'm sure that, I don't know how many people would want to travel to it, but that would be one possibility. But that said, there is nothing blocking, and we hope many organizations, from wanting to do their own projects in their own communities. And it could even be hunger relief. There are a ton of faith-based groups that do canned food drives. They do other kinds of sort of versions of what we do that are much more community-based. And so certainly we could give you a few pointers and ideas if that would be of some assistance to you. And that applies to anybody that would want to put on projects that might somehow connect back to hunger, or any other project. We may be able to give you some guidance on how to do it in your own community.
Great. And then we have one more question asking where do we apply for this for the grant?
So anyone who is interested in applying for CNCS Day of Service grants, they would go to www.nationalservice.gov/Day of Service, and I put that in the chat.
Great. We have Ted asking, are there some examples of projects taking place overseas that we could be directed to?
I can't specifically speak to that because I'd have to go and maybe search that, but typically our database is domestic. That said, I mean, there are people that participate in 9/11 Day, and gosh, I don't know, Jay, how many countries, like 150 nations, but we don't typically know necessarily what they're doing. Now that will change for the 20th because we're doing quite a bit more to begin to establish a more organized infrastructure internationally. So it's possible that by 2021, we may actually have a better idea. But certainly you could email us with more specifics, Ted, about where you're interested, where you, in specifically where you might be interested in learning more, and we can see what we can find out for you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Jen, we have a question here in
the chat.
We have another question here in the Q&A panel, and it says, are you connected with Students Rebuild Hunger Challenge?
No, and we'd like to be. No, but we would like to be. So if you can give us a little more guidance on that and send me an email about that, we're very interested in partnering with any organization that might be focused on hunger in particular, and might in fact be in some of our cities where perhaps some of the, in this case, student participants and others could play a role at our projects, whether they might be packing meals, or they could be, we might even be able to train them to be table captains or team leaders as part of their activities. But we'd also just be interested in knowing what they're doing. And we always try to promote nationally the projects of other organizations through our social media, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram applications. So Yes, we're very interested in partnering with them. We're not at this moment.
All right, Sarah, it looks like we have a raised hand.
Okay. Jeff will take the raise hand question.
Yes, this is Peter Hayes with Compassion Games. And
Hi, Peter.
how you doing,
How you
David?
doing?
We are doing well with
Great,
all the
awesome.
craziness going on, but
Yeah.
we will be applying for 2021. We weren't able to receive one for 2020, so we are going to have tons of volunteers during the 9/11. So we would like to see about the possibility of applying for any sub-grants from some of the organizations that were funded for this year.
All right, thank you. And Peter, just on a side note, we'll probably want to reach out with you all anyway, just to see in what locations you might be doing things for Compassion Games, to see if we might again line up around some of the meal packs we did, the work we did with you, particularly in New York that one year was just terrific.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Louisville would be a good location.
Okay.
Offhand.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. That's great, Peter. We'll be back in touch on that.
Any questions in the chat, Jen?
I am not seeing any additional. Peter, did your question answered? Do you feel like you? That may be a Rhonda answer. Just want to make sure you feel like you've got your question answered. Oh, he's muted now. Okay. Asking about sub-grants.
Sarah can send the list out of grantees that are still current, or once they're determined, can send out the list of grantees so that people know what the organizations are. And this is Rhonda, I'm sorry. And there was one question is, what if you don't have an e-grant? Sarah, can you explain what e-grants is?
Sure. So eGrants is CNCS's basically their grant management system. So all applications have to go through eGrants. I think some other federal organizations, I wanted to use grants.gov. We don't use that site for applications. So if you are interested in applying, you got to go to eGrants and create an account and submit your application there. Did that answer the question? Okay, I do see another one in the chat here. Go ahead, Jen.
I was going to say, it looks like we have another hand raised, I believe.
Yeah, from Jasmine. I don't know if she wanted to answer the question verbally. I know she also posted it in the chat.
This is Jeff. She lowered her hand.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. She says, I am in Memphis with City or Memphis. I was off the line. She just is wondering about getting caught up to speed. Do you, Sarah, do you want to just kind of re-answer on the recording?
On the recording, yes. So we'll have this webinar recorded and we'll get the link afterwards and we can share it out to participants who registered.
Great. We now have Rebecca asking, will there be opportunities for different AmeriCorps programs in the same cities to get together and do a larger project for 9/11 Day of Service?
And Jen, you could probably answer that one. At least it was late to us. Yeah. Yeah,
well, in the cities that we are running, and this is Jen Burke, I'm the National Program Director for 9/11 Day. In the cities that we are running our meal packs, we are working with CNCS offices, with state commissions, and really working to bring AmeriCorps volunteers in specifically as support staff. So if you are in one of our meal pack cities and interested in potentially supporting in that way, feel free to email me, Jennifer, jennifer.burke@911day.org, and I can continue that conversation with you.
And Rebecca, also, this is Rhonda at CNCS. We would really encourage you to get together with other AmeriCorps projects if you're not in an area that already has a large project planned. You know, I know that right now it's probably a struggle to get together, but it may be a great time to reach out when people may be teleworking or looking for other things to do that help them meet requirements. It could be a great time to get together to plan and look at what you could do together in the fall. And Sarah, there are a few grant specific questions in the chat too that you might
I
see.
saw there is some. Yeah, I think there might have been one or two regarding the 10 service locations. So in your 9/11 or MLK Day of Service application, we do ask that you include 10 service sites. We have a very, I would say, broad definition of service sites, so you can mention 10 communities, 10 neighborhoods, 10 schools, you know, and it can be any combination. Maybe you say we're going to serve a food pantry here, and then we're also going to serve this other community. You do need to include at least 10 service sites or locations. And I think if you want more information on that, the best place is to go to www.nationalservice.gov/day of service and look at our FAQ document. We also did a training and technical assistance webinar that's recorded, and there's a link to that as well on that page. And that really has a lot of more information about our competition. And I know that question was also asked in that one. So feel free to look at that.
There was a question about an I-9. Is an I-9 required?
I don't know exactly what that is referring to. I do not think so. What is required is you go into eGrants, you put in your application, and then if you're new to us, you are also submitting one additional document regarding your organization's finances. I want to say it's called the OFMS document, and that you would email to us, and that is in the NOFO. So I'm going to refer you back to the NO for that one.
Yeah, the I-9 is the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services form.
What I thought, but no, I don't think you would need to. No, you wouldn't give that to us.
I'm not seeing
We
any
do
more
not
chat
have any questions here. Yep. Any raised hands, Jeff, that we're missing?
No raised hands.
Okay.
Jasmine Bell and Rebecca were trying to reply to Rebecca. It looks like it only went to panelists, not all participants. So Jasmine, you may want to make sure that you and Rebecca exchange contact information. You're both in Memphis.
Sarah, and Rhonda, we did just get a question through from Robert asking, when will NOFA come out for 9/11 Day 2021?
Oh, and Sarah, you might want to just explain the fiscal year difference in the forward funding element, because I think this NOFA that is coming up right now, isn't that really for, essentially will cover the 2021 9/11 Day. Am I correct?
You are correct, and I think there's usually a lot of confusion around that. So the NOFO that is currently open and that you would need to submit an application for by March 25 is for service activities taking place in calendar year 2021, not this upcoming September. We already gave awards for this upcoming September last fall. So I guess the competition time and the time of you actually doing service activities, there's a lapse, there's a gap, but know that you would be applying for a service activity taking place in 2021.
Yes.
I see another one from Kimberly. Does the grant require a match? There is no match for 9/11. There is a 70% match for MLK.
Sarah, explain that it's not about MLK Day is not all cash, so that people aren't completely scared off. It's not cash money.
In kind.
It can be also in kind. It could be your staff time spent on the grant. So there's quite a few options to meet that match.
I'm not seeing any other questions.
Yep.
Should we give it one more minute for questions and then wrap it up with any concluding remarks? And yes, Jasmine, we can make sure we give you a link to the recording.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Last call. This is Rhonda again. Thank you everyone for joining us. If you're still on the line, David, Sarah, Jay, Jennifer, we're all really grateful that you took time today, and we look forward to the fabulous things that you will plan around and implement around 9/11. There will be a recording of this that we'll make sure is posted. So we hope if you weren't able to listen to the whole thing, it'll be there for a resource, and please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. Sarah is your go-to person on grants. David, Jay, and Jen are your 911day.org my good deed contacts, and I'm on the engagement side at CNCS. So thank you all again very much for joining this webinar.
Thank you very much,
Yeah,
everybody.
thank you very much.
Thanks,
Yep.
everybody.
Yeah, take care. Be safe, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.